Hello, everyone. I wanted to start more on time today. I figured that way Mers and Gonger would miss it. And I was right. They're not here, which is fine. We don't need them. We've got some real heavy hitters. We got Dave Eggert here from Cranes, which recently named me their 2025 Newsmaker of the Year for Detroit, along with Dan Campbell, many others, the highly respected CEO of Blue Cross, Tricia Keith, a lot of people. But there were, well, not very many. There weren't very many. There were like 10 people, but I'm their Newsmaker of the Year. Thanks for being here. Mr. Pluta's here, highly respected on Michigan radio. So we got a great group here today. Good to see you, Remington. It's a fantastic job you're doing across the state. For Sinclair, Travers, great job you're doing in the Midwesterner, and it's a consensus position that I'm the Newsmaker of the Year. Everybody is acknowledging that. I will say though, we have not seen who the Midwesterner's Newsmaker of the Year is, and I know the anticipation is building. I mean, Cranes has showed their cards. Everybody is wondering what the Midwesterner is going to do. Oh, Mr. Solis, good to see you, sir. He's a great guy. Michigan Advance, highly respected. By the way, I don't know why the media doesn't believe the things I say, but if a Democrat says it, they print it. But I want to give credit to the Michigan Advance. They reported a story yesterday that according to the fiscal experts, there will be potentially I believe it was $475 million shortfall in the general fund in what, 2020, that would be the 2028 budget. And we'll have to show them the tape, Jeff. So I came up here when we made the budget deal, and I said, the reason we're making this budget deal is because in the 2027 budget, which is what we're working on now, and the 2028 budget, which is next year's budget, the next year, once I'm reelected speaker, we'll be working on the 2028 budget next year. The deal we cut by doing no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security, by dedicating money away from the general fund and to roads, setting that higher priority. So instead of giving it to the politicians to spend it on waste, fraud, and abuse, we're dedicating that money to roads. What's happening because of those things, and by draining some of the Democrat slush funds in the first year, by doing that, we set up a framework where I've said this over and over. I said this the day that we did the deal. In year one, the budget is smaller than last year. We've already done that. The budget that we just did was smaller than the year before, the $81.5 billion budget. So this current budget, that is in practice, I made this deal last year at the end of September, is smaller than the year before. It's $81.5 billion. Now, the experts say that's the first time, if you take out like depressions, like the Great Depression, and you take out major wars like World War II, this is the first year where the budget was smaller than the year before. Now, what's happening is, because of the deal I made, this budget that we're working on now will have to be smaller than the year before. This will be year 2. And then year 3, 2028, the budget will again have to be smaller than the year before, year 3. Now, the fiscal experts don't project out farther than that. So we were in my office working on a whiteboard when we did this deal, as we're old-fashioned like that. We were, running the numbers. And our people told me, they said, if you make this deal right now, go back in that room and make this deal with Gretchen Whitmer right now and have her call Brinks and tell Brinks to make the deal. Because if you make this deal right now, this is what's going to happen. And they showed me the whiteboard, and it said, to the dollar, the same amount that came out in the correct estimate, which is we'd have to cut government by $800 million into the 2027 budget. Fast forward to the consensus revenue estimating conference. What do they say? We've got to cut $800 million from departments in this budget in order to balance the budget. Now, the second thing I said was, not only would we have to cut in 2027, we have to cut again in 2028. Fast forward to yesterday. House Fiscal comes out. What do they say? $450 million in 2028. Now, in order to do that, we've got to first cut the $800 million this year, and then we've got to cut the $450 million the next year, okay? This is a deal that all the legislative leaders made. We looked at this, we made the deal. Now, if the Democrats couldn't see past the pork we were dangling in front of them, then they made a bad deal. But the deal I made was not a one-year deal, it was a 3-year deal. And now you're seeing the revenue estimates come in. Democrats call it revenue shortfalls. But what it is it's giving more money back to the taxpayers through no tax on tip, overtime, and Social Security. It's setting better priorities for government, roads, and infrastructure instead of waste, fraud, and abuse. And what happens? We're forcing a conversation about cutting wasteful spending and making government more efficient. And that's what's happening. Now, Gretchen Whitmer came out with her budget. And by the way, I did a pretty good job of predicting what was going to be in there, didn't I? A lot of tax increases. Now, they proposed, Democrats and Whitmer, $800 million in tax increases in order to address this budget shortfall that the politicians purposely created. So the Democrats and Whitmer are proposing $800 million in tax increases, and the Republicans are saying, no, we're going to cut $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse, and we're going to make this budget more efficient. Government is going to have to live within its means, and we're going to, you think about it, that's about 1% of the budget, right? It's a $81.5 billion budget. We're talking about cutting $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse. Who doesn't think we can cut 1% of government, especially after it's grown over 40% since Whitmer started? We can cut 1% of government. We can go through line by line, and we can cut the waste, fraud, and abuse, and we can balance this budget without raising any taxes, and that's exactly the deal that I'm going to make later this year. So let's save that tape. We're going to cut $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse, and we aren't going to do any of these tax increases the governor proposed. The vape tax, we're not doing that. We're not doing a new cigarette tax. We're not taxing ZIN. They really want to tax ZIN for some reason. We're not doing that. We're not taxing internet gaming anymore. It's funny. They're proposing this 25 cent per bet, like Illinois. Has anyone been following the news today in Illinois and Indiana? So their proposal is this terrible tax that they came up with on internet gaming in Indiana, in Illinois, this terrible tax that they came up with in Illinois, which is 25 cents per bet. And if you look at the numbers, by the way, Illinois' internet gambling revenue isn't doing very well. And by the way, has anyone noticed that people aren't even doing internet gaming? They're going to these prediction markets, which probably they aren't taxed the same way. They're going to the prediction markets. And if you look at FanDuel and DraftKings stocks, they're actually the lowest they've been since the pandemic, when all the sports were shut down. And the reason for that, by the way, is people are moving toward the prediction markets anyway. So raising the taxes on internet gaming isn't going to accomplish what the governor thinks it is. But you look at what Illinois is doing, right, with their bad tax policies, with their bad regulatory policies, with policies like this 25 cent per bet internet gaming. What's going on today? My friend Speaker Houston in Indiana and their great governor Mike Braun, it appears they're going to land the new stadium for the Chicago Bears. So the Chicago Bears are, it appears, leaving Illinois and moving across the border to Indiana for their new stadium, a state that has much better tax and regulatory policies. And I mean, we all know, we've seen it, what a terrible job Illinois Governor Pritzker is doing. I think this is a very telling story of two different paths. You see Governor Pritzker with his tax policy, high taxes, high regulations, high cost of business, slow customer service from their economic development. And then you see Indiana. Indiana moves at the speed of business. Indiana has competitive tax policies. Indiana has competitive regulatory policies. And Indiana is going to steal the Chicago Bears from Illinois. I don't think there's a better case study to show the difference in these policies that you see. I mean, Indiana has moved forward to lower their income tax. Indiana is improving their customer service. They have one of the best customer service of any state in their economic development, helping not just the land businesses, but in the conversations that I've had with Indiana Governor Braun, what they're doing is they're focusing on growing their existing business. So they believe if we can solve the problems of our existing businesses, then what we're doing is we're making it not just better for our existing businesses, we're also reducing barriers for outside businesses that want to come into our state. Illinois doesn't do any of that. So I really applaud the state of Indiana for likely winning the new stadium and relocating the Chicago Bears to Indiana. Whoever thought we would see that? And hopefully Michigan can learn from this. Hopefully we can put together competitive tax policies, competitive regulatory policies. We can streamline and improve our customer service, and we can start landing big deals like Indiana is, because these are the states we're competing with. But anyway, just to talk about this, we're not doing internet gaming, we're not doing a digital advertising tax, we're not going to raise taxes on garbage. And we're not going to raise hunting and fishing fees. I will never support raising hunting and fishing fees. So all of those proposals are not going to happen. We're going to have to cut $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse and balance this budget. It's less than 1% of the state budget. We can make it happen. I've identified already $5 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse in this budget, including there's another 3,000 ghost employees. These are fake workers that they use to pad these programs. We've identified, as you've seen, over $10 billion of government slush funds. Of that, the government is literally getting $600 million a year of interest off of the taxpayers from the excess in budgeting every year. They budget a lot more every year than they need, and they're keeping the money, and they're getting $600 million a year in interest because they have so much money, but yet they're proposing raising your taxes. It is insane. We've got to stop it, and as Speaker, I will stop it, and the House Republicans will stop it, and we are going to get a more efficient, effective government by cutting the waste, fraud, and abuse and delivering for the second year in a row a smaller budget and a smaller state government than the year before. I did want to, I know there was a lot of anticipation about some of the recent awards that I'm getting, and I've just learned some more, which I won't get into today. But there's many more awards coming. But I did want to highlight one that I received since I saw you last. This is a very beautiful award from the, this is called the 2025 Economic Impact Award from the Michigan Bankers Association. Now, we didn't get any good pictures of my sledgehammer, so I'm gonna stand a little bit to the right and hold it, and then I'll come back. But look at this beautiful award. Look at this. All right, we got it? All right, last time I didn't pause. I don't know if you could get the picture from that angle, but I know, well, it's right there. The school groups have been looking at it. We left it there for all the school groups so they can come over, and we probably should put a rope around it. We don't want the school groups, we don't want the kids actually picking up the sledgehammer. I'm not sure the Capital Commission would like that, but and by the way, Terry Land's doing a great job. I appointed her to the Capital Commission. The Capital Commission is working better than it ever has. But anyway, Terry will call me and say, Matt, we don't want the kids playing with the sledgehammer. So we're going to have to put like a case around it or something. But anyway, the Economic Impact Award from the Michigan Bankers 2025. And I asked them, I said, why did you give me this award? And they said, there's too many reasons to list. Obviously, the sick leave and the tip credit, we saved the restaurant industry, we protected tip workers. We really, with the paid sick leave, we protected paid sick leave for Michigan workers, and we ensured that they created jobs, that they existed. I mean, what's the point of having paid sick leave if there are no jobs? So we found that balance. We delivered a smaller budget than last year. We gave them no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security. We delivered record funding in education. We were very successful, and by the way, the media won't say this. I read the Bridge story. It's probably why Bridge isn't here, because after writing that story, they probably didn't want to be here to face me. But they talked about all of the promises that Gretchen Whitmer made in her last State of the State. And I give them credit. It's pretty hard not to say that I had something to do with the Hall Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency Plan. So they had to say that I helped with that. I literally was at the White House with Gretchen Whitmer, so they kind of had to give me credit for Selfridge, because I was there, and I've been very involved in lighting and landing a new fighter mission for Michigan with President Trump and Governor Whitmer. But they didn't say anything about the roads. The roads never would have happened without me as Speaker and without the House Republicans. Well, fortunately, the bankers know that. And when you're talking about economic impact, and I'm now the 2025 Economic Impact Award winner, probably the biggest economic impact of anything we did was the roads deal. That's going to protect tens of thousands of jobs and create jobs in Michigan. I looked at the numbers on that, and this was bigger than any economic development deal that Governor Whitmer has proposed spending hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars on. We were going to lose, it was tens of thousands of Michigan workers, and instead we've added, I think it's 10 or 15,000 new jobs in construction, and we're not done yet. There's still more work to do on putting money into roads, but we literally saved this industry And that's why I've received the 2025 Economic Impact Award. So even though Bridge forgot that I was the driver of that, at least the bankers know. And that's why I'm the Economic Impact Award winner. But remember what Governor Whitmer said. I've never worked with a legislative leader that had the guts and the brains to put together a roads plan and move it through the chamber. Hopefully she says that again in her State of the State. You think she will? I bet she will. So nobody at Governor Whitmer, and that includes the Democrats. Remember, they had a Democrat trifecta. They did nothing on roads. They spent a $9 billion surplus, the Democrats, when they controlled everything, and they did nothing on roads. And Mike Duggan is right. When the Democrat trifecta existed, they did nothing. They accomplished nothing. I mean, we saw them holding up the education budget over their transgender agenda. Fortunately, that was solved. But I remember that was going on for a long time, where these Democrats were blocking the education budget over the transgender agenda. And Mike Duggan called them out. But he's right. They did nothing on roads. They did nothing on the literacy problem. They did nothing on affordability. It was dysfunction. I mean, remember Speaker Tate's #1 priority, the land value tax. He couldn't get that done. His own members blocked it. And that was a disaster. So really, they talk about housing affordability. The Democrats did nothing on a housing affordability. Remember, some of these bills that Joe Aragona introduced they could have passed this during their Democrat control of government. They didn't. They did nothing for housing affordability. Fortunately, Joe Aragona has reintroduced these bills, and now we're working on some of the regulatory changes needed to lower housing costs in Michigan. It's interesting. Some of the studies say it's like $95,000 of the cost of a new home is regulations. And so what Joe Aragona is doing with his announcement this week with House Republicans is we're working to eliminate some of those regulations. That's how you lower the cost of housing, is through better regulations. Do you remember the Democrats proposed some really crazy regulations to housing that were going to raise the cost even more? And there was so much outrage that got shelved for a while. But remember, they were going to put in higher insulation standards. They were going to make sure that there were you had to have these certain sprinklers in every house and all this. It was going to add hundreds of thousands of dollars more to the cost of home building in our, is ridiculous. Probably tens of thousands of dollars of cost to a new home. With all those new regulations by going to different home building standards, and that's been blocked for now. But what the Democrat philosophy is on home building is their philosophy is we're going to put more regulations on, continue to increase the cost through regulations, and then we're going to spend your tax dollars to lower the cost. So they raise the cost of a new home by $95,000 with regulations, and then they offer incentives to developers to lower that cost. Maybe they offer them $50,000 subsidy to lower that cost. We could just work on the regulatory framework. In addition to that, I think that part of lowering the cost of housing, we really can work on property taxes. And that's something that I and the House Republicans intend to do. I put this forward for 2026 as a top priority. I'm appreciative now that the Ultimate Lansing insider, Sarah Anthony, has a proposal. It's not a very good proposal, but it's a start. You guys, try to get her to explain to you this tax credit in 30 seconds. It's not easy. It's a very complicated tax credit, but it's a start. And then Governor Whitmer has now come to the table with a property tax proposal, which would lower property taxes for some seniors. I see that as a positive development too. So by me putting property taxes forward as an issue, I'm continuing to demonstrate how I am the newsmaker of the year, because what we're doing is I'm putting property tax forward, then the Senate Democrats put a plan on the table, then the governor puts a plan on the table. I would like to go further. I believe we need broader relief. I would like to see us eliminate the state education tax, those 6 mills. I think that would save the average homeowner about $900 a year. I think that we need to eliminate the rest of the personal property tax. You talk to small businesses, one of their biggest costs is this personal property tax. And what that does is if you invest, so, it makes sense. We want our small businesses investing in their businesses, buying new equipment that's good for the economy. We want them renovating. We want them growing their businesses, okay? But when you have a tax that every time they make an investment in their business, it raises their taxes considerably, their property taxes, that discourages growth and investment. Right? I mean, a small business is looking at this saying, I'm not going to expand this year because my taxes are going to go up, okay? Now, the Governor Snyder and the legislature understood the impact that this had on manufacturing. And so they got rid of the personal property tax on manufacturing. But this personal property tax that punishes growth and investment is still in existence for our small businesses and for our utilities. And I look at this, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on these, these utility executives, and I'm saying, look, I want to see you lower costs, and I want to see you invest in the grid. I would like to have a more reliable grid. Michigan has one of the worst reliable grids, and you get a little bit of wind. I mean, just a little bit of wind, and then your power gets out, and we see that all the time, and people get mad. Well, in order for those investments to occur, the utilities also pay a higher personal property tax. So if we make all the investments that we need in the grid, the property tax on the utilities is going to go way up. Well, what are they going to do? They pass that on to us. And our utility bills go up because the property taxes are going up. So if we get rid of the personal property tax, we're going to encourage innovation and investment and growth in our small business. We're also going to give a major incentive for more innovation and investment in our grid, in our energy grid. And we need that. We need a much more reliable, robust energy grid. We need those investments. Now, if we get rid of the personal property tax, I would also add to that, we're going to have to require the utilities to lower their rates. And so I would not go forward with eliminating the personal property tax without also mandating at least $1 billion rollback in our energy bills. Because you can't take away the cost, push them toward investment, and then not see a major reduction in our utility bills. And I think this will lead to major savings for our residents of Michigan. We can get a more reliable grid and a more affordable energy bill. And one of the things I hear a lot from people across Michigan is our energy bills are too high. This will, by forcing them to roll back your rates by $1 billion and give them an incentive to invest in the grid, we'll be lowering rates considerably and will be improving reliability so you won't get those power outages. The third thing that I think we need to do is we need to eliminate the real estate transfer tax completely. This is a cost that goes into, I would say it goes into, you sell your house or you buy a house and you get this big tax on your house. And it's about, I want to say it's about $400 million a year, might be a little more, might be 450 that the state collects from this. But ultimately when we're talking about affordability of housing, so a few years ago, this rogue MISHDA director was kind of floating raising the real estate transfer tax in order to pay for more affordable housing. So her plan was, let's raise the real estate transfer tax, and then let's collect all this money from raising the real estate transfer tax, and then let's use it to pay off developers to make affordable housing, okay? That is so backwards. So you're raising the cost of buying and selling property in order to make developers make houses cheaper. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, why would you raise taxes on people buying and selling real estate, making their property cost more, putting it into some pot to make housing more affordable for developers to develop? That doesn't make sense. So fortunately, I blocked that, and they kind of went away with that. That proposal went away. And I don't think Governor Whitmer ever agreed with that proposal, but you guys would have to ask her. So now what I'm proposing is we need to get rid of the real estate transfer tax altogether. There shouldn't be a penalty for buying and selling real estate. We shouldn't do that. That will help lower the cost considerably. That will lower closing costs. I mean, you talk to people and they say, let's say closing costs are like $15,000 on the average home, $10,000 to $15,000 on the average home. You're talking about $2,000 or $3,000 of that are on the average home is your real estate transfer tax. If you get rid of that real estate transfer tax, you're lowering that barrier to buying a new home. I think that's really important. While I think the governor's proposal on the property taxes, I'm happy she put a proposal forward. There's some downsides to her proposal. Okay, so when we're talking about the cost of housing, one of the challenges we have is that there's not enough supply. There's not enough homes on the market that people are trying to sell. The fewer homes on the market, the higher the price. So what the governor's proposing, and then you've got a group of seniors. These are seniors. They're living in their homes. Probably, in many cases, they've had these homes for decades. In many cases, these homes are much bigger than what they need. Now, what I would propose is eliminating the pop-up tax, okay? I think that some of the proposals of the past, there were some very good things in Proposal A. There were some very good things in Headley. The problem is when you're restraining the growth of property taxes to inflation or 5%, whichever's lower, and by the way, under Biden, it was basically 5% every year, and that's why we're having this problem, because it's like 20% higher than it was after Biden. It's growing by 5% a year. Okay, it would have grown by a lot more than that, probably, if it weren't for those protections, okay? The problem is, as soon as you sell your home, you lose all of that, and it goes all the way up to the real value, and half of that. So what happens is the efforts to keep your property taxes lower than inflation are only protected while you own that home. Once you sell that home, then it goes all the way back up and you don't have those protections. And so if you go back to, say, 1990, and you look at what's happened since then, these reforms worked for a few years, but once they sold their homes and then sold them again, it essentially has no effect over time. Everyone is up at that higher level. That's why states like Florida have looked at this and said, we need to get rid of this pop-up tax so that there's a way to, you have that base value and it doesn't go way up when you sell it. The effect of that is seniors, if they want to buy a smaller home, they can't because their property tax will go up. I mean, say they bought this house in the 1990s and then they sell it and they want to move into a much smaller house. In most cases, the property taxes they'll be paying are higher in the smaller house, so they don't sell their homes. So if we get rid of this prop-up tax, what will happen is there'll be an incentive for them to sell their homes, to move into smaller homes, which will create demand there. But also there'll be a freeing up of all these other homes that people can buy. It'll increase the supply. You contrast that with the governor's plan. The governor's plan is really to give more tax incentive for those seniors to stay in the homes they're in. Okay, and I think that's very good to lower the cost, the property taxes cost for seniors. I think that's good. But by doing it this way, you're incentivizing those seniors to stay in their existing homes. That really works with the philosophy of, okay, we're going to keep the seniors in these homes, and then we're going to pay developers to build affordable housing with your tax dollars, okay? That's not the model. We get the seniors, we give, they have an incentive to move into homes that work for them, and then families can start, we're moving into the homes the seniors have, and we're increasing the housing supply, we're increasing more demand, and by doing it that way, we can really begin to increase supply and lower costs of homes, and we can make it more affordable for people to buy and sell homes. We can make it more, and if you do that, what you're going to see is the price of these homes are going to go down. So we need less regulations, we need a better tax structure, and we need to come up with a better way to incentivize a bigger supply of homes. So if we do that, I think you'll see a much better outcome, and you won't have to spend hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars to subsidize all these homes that essentially the government have made unaffordable. And that's why, while I applaud Whitmer for putting a proposal forward, I don't agree with this because it has a negative consequence of really giving those seniors an incentive not to sell their homes and move into smaller homes, which by eliminating the pop-up tax, we would actually encourage that. And really, if you're a senior, you should live, a lot of seniors want to live in homes that are like one level, so they don't have to walk up and down stairs and into the basement. As you get older, there's a lot of people want a smaller home, they just can't afford it. So we're going to be introducing bills to do all of these things very soon. And we'll be working on a way to do that I think will be a net tax cut, but it'll be mostly revenue neutral. I think you'll see it be a net tax cut, but we're going to backfill all the schools and we're going to backfill all of the local governments. I think it's really important that our local governments are made whole. I think it's important that we continue building on all the record investment that we've made in schools under my leadership and the House Republican leadership in the House. So we'll do it in a way that's probably a net tax cut, but we're going to make sure we make all the schools whole and all the local governments whole. So more to come on that, but I'm grateful that Sarah Anthony and Governor Whitmer have expressed an interest in property tax reform. But we need real, bold, and meaningful property tax reform, and also really bold reform to lower the cost of of homes. So you want to lower the cost of buying and selling a home, you want to lower the cost of having a home, and you want to lower the cost of property taxes. And so I look forward to those conversations continuing. So there's probably a lot more I could get into, but I'll just stop there if there are any questions. And it's okay if they're not. Hey, Beth.
Hey, so your tax plan, education tax, personal property taxes, real estate transfer tax,
It'll probably be a net tax cut, but a lot of it will be revenue neutral, and I would call it the $6 million. Yeah, the $6 million state education tax. So, I'm really an expert in property taxes. I've been talking about it for a long time. And what I would say is so the mills vary. The mills vary a lot from city to city and from township to township. But the state levies, the only tax the state levies here is the $6 million state education tax. So I think the state can eliminate that $6 million state education tax. I estimate that'll save the average homeowner $900 a year, because $6 million on your property. It depends on the property value, but assume roughly $150,000 is the average taxable value. It'd be about $900 a year. And so we're going to do that, but we're also going to replace all the revenue for the education tax too. And I have a plan to do that, which I'll share with you another time. Yeah, Ben.
The government proposing tax rates. You talk about tax cuts and saying we'll obtain those increases. Are the seeds already planted here this early in the cycle for another late budget fight and potentially back-to-back government shutdowns?
Well, if you ask the governor, there was no government shutdown because the governor said the government just stays open when she says it does. And I give you guys credit. Even you guys didn't buy that. I mean, I think they buy just about everything the governor says, but even that was even a bridge too far for you guys at the Michigan Advance. But remember, what we did was we passed a continuing resolution, a clean continuing resolution, and do you remember they were all mocking us for passing the government shutdown prevention plan? And that was literally what stopped a government shutdown. It's kind of ironic. But I'd just say it depends. It depends how committed the Democrats are to raising taxes and raiding the rainy day fund. Because that's a bright line. We're not raising taxes and we're not raiding the rainy day fund. This is not a rainy day. And by the way, did you see Mamdani come out and propose raiding the rainy day fund in New York City to grow government? Now Gretchen Whitmer is proposing that. And we cannot do that. This is not an economic downturn. This is not a depression. I heard recently, Michigan is more affected during these major economic downturns than other states. We should be putting more away for a true economic crisis and not spending our reserve money during a time that isn't an emergency. This is a deal that was a bipartisan deal that forced government to become more efficient this year. So if the Democrats are dug in on raising taxes and on raiding our rainy day fund and spending more than we take in, then we're going to have a prolonged budget battle. My hope is, though, as the top deal maker up here at the Capitol, that I'll make a deal with Governor Whitmer. We'll shed all of the proposals for higher taxes and for raiding the rainy day fund, and we'll make a deal to shrink government by 1% and eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, and deliver a balanced budget that is equivalent to the revenue we're taking in. I'm also hopeful that we'll have bold property tax reform, and we'll lower utility bills by forcing the utilities to lower their rates by at least $1 billion. and will increase the housing supply and will lower the cost of housing. So I think we can do all of those things. I also think we can do both things on healthcare too, to lower the cost of healthcare.
Just as a follow-up, if the Democrats do agree with your housing proposal and tax proposal, are you willing to give them at least one of their tax increases?
No, we're not going to do any of their tax increases. Yeah, Dave Eggert.
You mentioned trying to get to a revenue neutral position, or looking at tax increases somewhere else to offset these tax cuts and property tax cuts.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at that because in order to make it, I think it'll be a net tax cut because I think we have too much revenue now, and we'll have to replace. We'll have to come up with a more fair way to fund schools and local governments. We'll have to do that because we want to continue to make record investments in education and local government. So, we'll come up with a different way to get the funding for local governments and schools, something that's more fair than taxing homeowners every year 6 mils. Which is about $900 a taxpayer. So we're going to come up with a more fair way to do that. I have a plan to do that, but I'm going to wait to tell you what it is. But you're right, we'll have to replace it. But I don't think we need to replace all of it, just what goes to schools and local governments. Yeah, Travers. Oh, hold on. Did you have a follow-up, Mr. Eggert?
Do you have a total for how much of the property, what's the overall ability?
Yeah. What do you think it is, Jeff? It's like $4 billion, something like that. Is that right? Probably about $4 billion.
That would be the cut of all those four.
I think that's right. Do you agree with that, Gideon? It's probably about $4 billion. So we'll find it. By the way, I told you there's already $5 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse. So we'll find it. There's a lot of other things we don't need, but we're also going to replace a lot of the revenue. But we're going to do it as a net tax cut. Yeah, go ahead, Travers.
I was just wondering if you could share your perspective about the 2 police officers in Detroit that were fired because of their assistance.
Oh, you heard about that?
Yeah.
Did you guys all hear about this? This is really unfortunate. So, I had the opportunity to speak to Mayor Sheffield about this, and Mayor Sheffield and I, we're getting to know each other. And by the way, she's another newsmaker of the year, according to Cranes. And I understand why. I mean, she won that election pretty big, so I give her credit for that. But we have a problem here. I think one of the things that we need to see from the city of Detroit is cooperation with ICE. It's my understanding that these 2 officers didn't follow their protocol. But on the other hand, I mean, what happened was the arrest of, and now hopefully the beginning of deportation against somebody who was a very serious criminal. And so while you have this small process violation, you have someone who is a very serious criminal that now is in the custody of ICE and is now hopefully going to begin deportation hearings. We don't want criminal illegal aliens in Michigan. I mean, you look at all the violence, the murders, the criminal sexual conduct that's occurred by some of these criminal illegal aliens. In order to make Michigan safer, we need our local governments cooperating with the immigration enforcement. So, I understand the need to, educate those officers on their policies, but I would say an outcome where these 2 officers are fired would be completely unacceptable to me and to the House Republicans. And so I'm really hoping they find a resolution that results in a more appropriate way to handle this. I think these two officers were doing their job, and at the end of the day, right, they're dealing with a very serious criminal that is now in the hands of ICE. And so I would say it's a very serious problem if the city of Detroit fires these two officers. And I think we would have to look at some of our policies in the House. You know, we have a House resolution that this body adopted that said we're not going to give some of the pork spending to cities that are sanctuary jurisdictions. And so we'd have to look at this very carefully as we evaluate a policy where police officers are fired for calling ICE, and how that worked with our policy that said we will not give this additional funding to these sanctuary jurisdictions. We'd have to look at that very carefully. I also know this is a major concern that I have, and that firing these two officers would be unacceptable to me. And would very much sever the relationship that we're building between me and the city of Detroit. So I'm very hopeful that they make the right decision and find a more appropriate way to deal with this violation of their policy, something that will result in the officers learning, right? Learn their policy, understand the reasons for their policy. But to fire these two officers would be completely unacceptable and would really damage the relationship I'm trying to build with the city, with their new leadership. So I'm hopeful they'll make the right decision. Yeah, go ahead.
What are your thoughts on Governor Whitmer going to legal things?
On what?
Governor Whitmer going to legal things.
I don't have any thoughts on that. No. Yeah, in the back.
House oversight kicked out the bills to the statutory ban NDAs for legislators and staff.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
So House Oversight kicked out bills to stop the politicians from having NDAs?
And staff.
Yeah.
How quickly, if so, would you expect that to go through the House?
Okay. Yeah, well, I give Rick credit. That's Rick. You know things I don't even know, isn't he? It's like you're in the room, with us. But I don't know. You must have a source, like watching House TV. Now I'm working on fixing House TV. By the way, most of the House TV users are us at the Capitol, and I'd like to get closed captioning. I think that would be really good if we had closed captioning. And I don't know if you see this screen they have, but it's like 90% blue, and it's like these are the meetings today. And then right in the left side, it's like 10% of the screen they fit. It's like the quad box. So I'm working on what if this was like NFL Red Zone, where it was just the quad box, and you could watch 4 committees at once, and they had a closed caption. We could all go a lot further. So I'm working on those changes. But yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that I've called for a long time is to stop these NDAs. So I'm happy that the House Oversight Committee is moving forward on that. I'm not under any NDAs, and I really think we should be approaching these projects, whether they're data centers, whether they're battery plants, whether they're semiconductor plants. When we're going into these communities, we really should come in and communicate, get their buy-in, and these NDAs don't accomplish that. So I used to think that if there were people that had strong disagreements that had NDAs, you had the protections there. But the public doesn't think that. The public says all the politicians are in cahoots. So the better approach is just to get rid of the NDAs and to be honest about what we're trying to do in these local communities. And then maybe the communities would support it more. And if the communities learned more earlier and were more bought in, you wouldn't see these uprisings later, and I think it would be better for everybody. So we're going to move on it, but I'll have to look at what they passed. But I'm very happy to hear they're doing that. Remington.
How
Yeah.
Detroit, Lansing, and the one in Wyoming for the sexual orientation and gender ideologies.
I think it's a good thing. I'm very happy to see that happening. You know, we need to be very, you know, we need to handle these things appropriately, right? And most people don't want their young kids learning about some of these things at very young ages. And so hopefully the Department of Justice gets to the bottom of it. And if it's going on, they put a stop to it. So I appreciate that the Department of Justice is looking into these districts, and hopefully the districts are following the law. And if they're not, then I hope the Department of Justice holds them accountable. And I would welcome more investigations. I mean, you look at this MHSAA and what they're doing with the transgendered athletes. You know, somebody should investigate that too, honestly. Was there something here, Ben?
Yeah, you mentioned the Arizona grant.
Yeah.
housing bills.
Yeah.
You know, you spoke pretty highly of them, speak very fondly, but at the press conference, it was asked if you supported those bills and removed them quickly from the
Mhm.
House. He said you supported them in concept, but couldn't get a definite. Can we get a definite now, or is that a priority for you this year to remove those bills as they are?
Well, I like some of them. You know, I'm still looking at them. There's a lot of Democrats' names on there, so I'm looking through them. But you know, I agree with them on the concept of reducing regulations. I mentioned that it's like $95,000 to the cost of a new home, all these regulations, and to the extent that these lower those regulations and lower that cost, I think you'll see us move at least some of them. Yeah, but some of them are in the Senate and they would have to move, you know, and good luck with that. Are they here today? Does anyone know? You think they are? But see, we're not sure if they're here. Go ahead, Travers.
In Governor Whipper's budget, there was $10 million for arts and culture.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that something that you would see cutting in your budget?
Yes, yeah, I would definitely see us cutting the $10 million for the wasteful art and culture grants. I mean, you know, these go to barbershop quartets, glass blowing groups, puppet art groups. I never knew what puppet art was until I started looking into these grants. And apparently there are these two competing puppet art groups in Detroit, and they all get hundreds of thousands of dollars of your tax dollars. And, you know, we all support the arts. Arts are a good thing for our communities and our culture in Michigan, but when you got to cut $800 million or raise taxes, these are the kind of things that we can cut, and I would support cutting again. Yeah, David?
Follow up on that question about the housing package.
Yeah.
How do you approach that issue of the issue of local control? Obviously, Republicans have enforced local control on things like
Right.
citing. This is something where local governments say it should be up to them to decide things like setback requirements and the lot sizes, things like that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I would compare it to like these sanctuary policies, right? I mean, like in the city of East Lansing, it's a sanctuary city. You know, we're going to see about Detroit, depending on how they handle this issue with these two police officers. But when a local government is out of control, then it's the job of the state government to step in and to set better criteria. You know, it's my view that the state is delegating a lot of this authority to the local governments. We want the local governments to wield it responsibly, but if they don't, then the state has to come in and give them better guidelines. And so in the case of a lot of these extreme regulations that we're seeing on housing in these local governments, we're going to review them, and where we see that they're adding too much cost, where we see that there's more costs than benefit, we're going to have to come in and clarify what the local governments can do and what they can't do. And we're prepared to do that here on housing. Yeah, Beth?
I wanted to follow up on a question we asked earlier about how you make like a school local government
Yeah.
school and you were talking property taxes. So you're saying you could find savings within current departments to mitigate that 4 billion, but you would also find new revenue somewhere? So
Right.
raise taxes elsewhere?
Right, so, first of all, we could do it solely by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, and I've shown that. I mean, there's over $4 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse that I've identified. Schools would be a much better use of that than the waste, fraud, and abuse. They're spending on it now. Now, separate from that, I also would support coming up with a more fair way to raise revenue to make schools whole and local governments whole, but overall, it'll be a net tax cut. And I do have a plan, but I'm not, I gotta, I'll share that for another time.
Why not share it now?
I mean, some of you guys, I don't want to give you too much at once because, I want, you guys, you're busy people and you might not get it all right. Go ahead. Well, you just tell them. You see, you'll probably leave it. I'm not going to pick on you. Well, I have a plan. I'm not going to get into it today, but it'll be lower taxes, but we're going to replace all the funding. It's revenue neutral on the schools and on local governments. Well, you could do that. You could. There's a lot of ways you could do it. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Well, normally I like to end when session ends, but I thought I'd go a little longer for you guys today because I like you all so much. So I hope everyone has a very nice remainder of their day and enjoys session. Thank you.